As an ER doctor, I thought nothing could shock me. Until I saw my childhood toy in a dying man's hand. The doors blew open at 2:11 a.m., rain chasing the gurney across the threshold. Paramedics barked vitals through their masks. Male, late 30s, found face down beneath the Riverside overpass. Hypothermic, GCS 8, no ID. Water tracked the floor in a wavering trail. Thin rivers that found each other and pooled under the wheels. "Temp?" I asked, snapping gloves on. 31 Celsius and falling, the medic said. Sinus Brady, weak as hell, pupils sluggish. We swung him into Trauma 3. He was pale beneath a sheen of river grit, hair matted with silt, lips blue as bruised plums. We cut clothes, bagged what we could salvage. I reached for his left hand to place an IV and froze. He was clutching a small red fire truck. Die-cast metal, white ladder. The paint along the cab was chipped in a crescent the exact size of a bicycle pedal, because I had scraped it there the summer I was 7. For a second, the room thinned and tilted. I saw a suburban curb, a storm grate, rainwater roaring like applause. My father shouting to leave it, the red flash disappearing between iron bars. I never forgot the sound the truck made as the current took it. Tink, 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 like a heartbeat made of tin. "Doctor?" Marta's voice pulled me back. "You okay?" "Clamp his airway," I said, forcing my hand steady. "Warm blankets, forced air warmer, 2 large bore IVs, check for trauma." We worked him fast. His chest rose beneath the ambu bag in stubborn, shallow arcs. His fingers never loosened. Even when Marta tried to pry them open, the tendons stood out like cables, the toy welded to his palm by cold and will. "Leave it," I muttered, "for now." We rolled him to scan. On the way back, the toy finally slipped just an inch and kissed the rail with that delicate metal sound, tink. It vibrated through me like recognition. When we returned to the bay, I lifted his hand gently and eased the truck free. It was heavier than memory, slick with river water that smelled faintly of algae and old pennies. I turned it over. There, scratched into the dull underside with something sharp and impatient, were 3 clumsy letters, D, R, J. My father's pocket knife, a Saturday on the porch, my small fingers guiding his hand. My initials. "Impossible," I heard myself say. The monitor ticked at 40 beats per minute, as stubborn as a clock in a burning house. His eyelids trembled. A shiver ran through him that had nothing to do with cold. "We've got rewarming on board. Potassium's not catastrophic. If he..." The patient's head turned toward me with the slow determination of a sleepwalker. His lips parted, a bubble of river water breaking on his tongue. When he spoke, the words dragged over gravel. "You dropped it," he whispered. My throat tightened. "What did you say?" His eyes opened fully then, cloudy, unfocused, but locked on mine like he was peering through 30 years. "At the grate. You asked me to keep it safe." The truck lay in my palm, dripping a dark circle onto the stainless tray. Somewhere in the hollow of its chassis, a tiny spring wound itself with a faint, dry churr. The ladder shivered once, though I hadn't touched it. The monitor hiccuped, one long pause, and my childhood siren let out the softest, impossible whine. For a moment, the whole trauma bay seemed to stop. The nurses exchanged uneasy glances, but no one said a word. The patient lay there, skin gray, lips quivering, yet his eyes remained fixed on me, as if he'd been waiting decades for this exact moment. You can't know that," I stammered. My voice cracked like a child's. The man's chest hitched, another weak gasp rattling loose. His words dragged over his tongue like rust scraping metal. "You left it in the dark. I waited." Marta frowned, leaning closer to suction his airway. "He's delirious, cold water drowning, patients ramble nonsense." But it wasn't nonsense. Not to me. Every syllable struck like a hammer on old memory. I looked at the toy fire truck still resting in my palm. The red paint glistened as though fresh, though decades of dirt should have dulled it. Water dripped steadily from its seams, dark and viscous, staining the tray like old blood. I rubbed my thumb across the ladder, expecting the familiar squeak of cheap metal. Instead, I felt heat, faint but alive. I set the toy down too quickly, and it landed with that same tink against the steel, vibrating my bones. The monitor spiked. His heart rate shot from 40 to 90 in seconds. His chest heaved with new strength. For the first time since arrival, he tried to sit up, his hands twitching toward mine. "Restrain him," I ordered, though the words came automatically. Marta and another nurse pinned his arms gently, worried about arrhythmias, but his gaze never wavered from me. "Doctor," Marta said quietly, "he's stabilizing. It's like he found something to hold on to." I nodded stiffly. My stomach churned, because I knew exactly what he was holding on to. When I was 7, I didn't just lose the toy, I lost something else. My cousin Tommy had slipped on the wet curb, his head striking concrete, blood mixing with storm water. I remember screaming, my father scooping him up, the fire truck disappearing down the grate as if the street demanded a payment. We never spoke of it again. Tommy survived, but changed, quieter, distant, always blaming himself for falling. And now, decades later, a nameless man clutched the truck that had drowned in that same storm. "Doctor," Marta said again, sharper this time. I turned back. The patient was mouthing words, lips cracked, no sound. I leaned closer, my ear hovering over his face. "You never signed the chart." "What?" I whispered. His eyes rolled back. The monitor flatlined with a shriek. Nurses swarmed, compression starting, adrenaline drawn. I stood frozen, staring at the toy fire truck on the tray. Its wheels spun on their own, squeaking faintly, though no hand touched them. And from its hollow body came a sound so soft only I seemed to hear it. Tiny, wet breaths. The breaths of a drowning child. The monitor screamed its flatline, while Marta started compressions, her palms slamming down rhythmically on the man's chest. Another nurse squeezed the ambu bag, forcing air into dead lungs. The room filled with the brutal percussion of resuscitation. Thud, hiss, thud, hiss. "Push epi," I barked, my voice automatic, clinical. Yet my eyes weren't on the patient, they were on the toy. The fire truck vibrated against the tray, wheels spinning faster, ladder twitching like it was trying to extend. Water seeped from its seams, dripping onto the floor in steady ticks. The puddle grew, inching toward my shoes. "Doctor," Marta snapped. "Focus." I tore my gaze away and leaned in to assess. The patient's chest looked wrong. Each compression pressed out more water than blood, bubbling at the corners of his mouth. With every bagged breath, a gurgling whine escaped, not human, not mechanical, but something in between. And then, as if answering some hidden cue, the toy siren whined too. A soft, eerie wail that matched the rhythm of compressions perfectly. The nurses froze. One muttered, "What the hell?" "Keep going," I ordered, though my fear frayed the edges of my voice.
The man's eyes shot open, glassy, lifeless, yet locked straight on mine. His lips moved again, though the monitor still shrieked its flat line. "You dropped it, but I kept breathing." The overhead lights flickered. For one heartbeat, the entire trauma bay looked submerged, walls rippling, ceiling bending like the surface of water above us. Then it snapped back, the fluorescent glow harsher than ever. "We're losing him!" Marta shouted, her voice desperate. I forced my hands onto his sternum, pushing down hard, harder than protocol allowed. With every thrust, more water erupted from his mouth, splashing across my arms, soaking my coat. My skin burned where it touched me, as if the river itself had followed him here. Finally, the monitor jumped. A pulse. Weak, chaotic, but real. Relief flooded the room. The nurses moved with renewed urgency, securing lines, checking vitals. Marta exhaled, muttering, "He's back, for now." But I couldn't celebrate, because the toy truck had fallen silent, its wheels still, its siren quiet, but it no longer sat on the tray. It rested in the patient's hand again, fingers curled tight around it, dripping steadily onto the floor. And when I leaned closer, I saw my initials scratched into the metal, gleaming like fresh wounds. The patient lay motionless, chest heaving in shallow, ragged pulls. His fingers clenched the toy fire truck so tight the tendons stood out like wires. Each drop that slid off the toys struck the tile with a rhythm almost too deliberate to be chance. Marta hovered at the bedside, recording vitals with shaking hands. "BP's unstable, but he's holding," she said. Then lower, "Doctor, that toy, how did it get back in his hand?"
I opened my mouth, closed it again. What could I say? That I'd watched it move by itself? That a 30-year-old piece of my childhood had surfaced in the palm of a drowning stranger? Words knotted in my throat. A faint sound cut through the monitor beeps. At first I thought it was the hiss of oxygen flow, but then it shaped itself, high, reedy, unmistakable. A child's giggle. It seeped from the patient's lips, thin and hollow. I froze. Marta's eyes darted to me, wide with disbelief. "You heard that too, right?" Before I could answer, his jaw slackened and a whisper slithered out. Small, fragile, impossibly familiar. "Don't leave me in the water again." My stomach clenched. That voice, it wasn't the man's. It wasn't his age, his tone. It was mine. My childhood voice warped by distance, echoing back through years. I gripped the rail to steady myself. Impossible. The patient's eyelids fluttered open. His gaze was clouded, half drowned, but his mouth curved into a smile I remembered. Crooked, gap-toothed, 7 years old. "You promised you'd keep me safe." The words sliced through me. I stumbled back, my knee knocking a tray of instruments to the floor. The clatter rang out, sharp and grounding, but the world already felt tilted, slippery. "Doctor?" Marta's voice was trembling now. "What's happening?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My childhood memories swarmed. Rain, a storm drain, Tommy slipping, my fire truck tumbling away. But now they twisted, reshaped. I remembered my own reflection in the water that day, staring back, lips moving beneath the surface. The patient's hand twitched. The fire truck tumbled free and landed between us, wheels squeaking faintly as they spun. It stopped with the ladder pointing directly at me.
The patient, no, the child inside him, let out another thin giggle. "Your turn," he whispered. The heart monitor spiked, then flatlined again. And over the shrill alarm, I swear I heard the faint tink, tink, tink of metal bouncing down a storm grate. The monitor shrieked its flatline. Marta leapt into motion, barking for compressions, for another round of epi. Nurses swarmed, dragging carts and tubing, the room collapsing into urgent chaos. But I couldn't move. My feet were cemented to the tile, my gaze locked on the fire truck lying between us. Its wheels spun lazily, as though winding down from some invisible force. With each rotation, water dripped from its chassis in heavy beads, spreading a dark stain across the floor. "Doctor," Marta's voice cut through the storm. "Are you with us?" I blinked, shook myself, and dropped to the patient's side. My palms pressed against his sternum, forcing his chest down in violent compressions. But it was like pumping a waterlogged sponge. Each thrust squeezed more river water out of his throat, splashing cold against my wrists. The nurses exchanged uneasy looks but kept working. The air in the room thickened, damp, smelling faintly of algae. The fire truck rattled on the tray, its ladder rising slowly like a skeletal arm.
"Charge to 200, I ordered, though my voice shook. Pads slapped onto the man's chest. The defibrillator screamed to life. But as the charge built, something shifted. The monitor didn't show asystole anymore. It showed my heart rhythm, my exact baseline pattern, every quirk and notch I'd memorized from my own yearly physicals. My stomach dropped. "That can't be." "Clear," Marta shouted. The jolt arced through the patient's body, his back arched. The smell of ozone mingled with wet stone. For an instant, the overhead lights flickered, and in that flash, I saw myself lying on the gurney, skin pale, chest jerking, my own face slack beneath the pads. I tore my eyes away, choking down bile. "Again! Charge again!" But the patient's lips moved, no sound at first, then a bubbling hiss. "You left me." I froze mid-compression. The words weren't slurred or delirious. They were sharp, accusatory, and they carried the weight of memory I'd buried deep. The room fell silent. The nurses stared at me like I was the one speaking nonsense. Marta's voice was small now, uncertain. "Doctor, he didn't say anything. You did." I looked at her, horrified. No, you heard." But she was already backing away, eyes wide with fear. The monitor blared with new life, a steady rhythm, strong, deliberate. But the number flashing wasn't his heart rate. It was mine. My age. 37, bright, insistent, pulsing across the screen. And on the tray beside me, the fire truck's siren whined to life, shrill and childlike, echoing through the ER. The siren's shrill whine cut through the ER. So faint at first, I thought it was in my head. But the pitch rose higher, sharper, until everyone in the room froze. The nurses glanced around in confusion, searching for the source. Marta's hand hovered over the defibrillator switch, her lips parted, but no words escaping. Only I looked at the tray, where the fire truck rattled violently. Its ladder jerked upward and down, like a signal no one else could read. Water spilled from its seams, poodling toward the gurney legs, snaking around my shoes. And then it stopped. The toy lay still, silent. The patient gasped, his chest lifted on its own, ribs straining like a bellows. His eyes snapped open, milky white, but burning with something inside them. Awareness, accusation. He sat up so suddenly that 2 nurses screamed and stumbled back. I shoved him down instinctively, my hand against his sternum. His skin was cold, soaked,
but the strength beneath it wasn't frail anymore. He gripped my wrist with bruising force, and when he spoke, it wasn't the rasp of a drowning man. It was a child's voice. "You never came back from me." My knees weakened. The words sliced 30 years away, straight to that storm grate, that roaring current, that impossible glimpse of a face beneath the water. The nurses whispered among themselves, fear dripping into every syllable. What's happening? Is this some kind of seizure? But I knew better. The man wasn't speaking to them. He was speaking to me. "You promised. You let me fall."
"No," I whispered, but the memory twisted in my chest like a knife. Tommy slipping, the fire truck tumbling, my reflection staring back from the water's surface. The monitor spiked. Numbers whirled, flashing nonsense. 37, 7, 309, 0. Then it flatlined again. The patient collapsed, his grip releasing. Nurses rushed forward, scrambling to resume compressions. But the toy wasn't on the tray anymore. It sat in the hallway, just beyond the trauma bay doors, wheels glistening with a trail of wet footprints leading into the dark. And I realized with a bone-deep certainty, the toy wasn't following him, it was following me. The nurses shouted for another round of meds, but their voices blurred into static. My eyes locked on the doorway, where the fire truck sat in perfect stillness, as though waiting. Water pooled beneath it, spreading outward in dark tendrils that crept across the linoleum toward me. Marta noticed my stare. "Doctor? What is it?" Her tone wavered between concern and fear. I couldn't answer. My legs moved before my mind caught up. I pushed through the swinging doors, stepping into the dim corridor. The ER noise dulled instantly, like the doors sealed me off from the living. The toy truck squeaked forward, just once. Its wheels spun, leaving a streak of wet behind them. I followed. The hallway stretched long and empty, lit by buzzing fluorescent bulbs that hummed with uneven rhythm. The truck rolled farther ahead, stopping at each junction like it was waiting for me to catch up. Every tink of its wheels against the tile echoed like a clock counting down. "Doctor!" Marta's voice carried faintly from behind me. The doors swung open. She was following. "Where are you going?" I didn't turn. My throat was too tight to speak. We passed radiology, the shadowed waiting lounge, the cold vending machine hum. Each corner I turned, the toy was there, leading me deeper. The floor grew wetter, my shoes slapping as if I were walking through shallow water, but the ceiling vents stayed dry. No leak, no explanation. Finally, the truck stopped outside the stairwell. It shivered once, then its siren let out a faint whine. Childlike, beckoning. I bent down slowly, trembling, and reached for it. The moment my fingers brushed the cold, wet metal, the stairwell door opened by itself. A rush of damp air spilled out, smelling of earth and storm drains. Marta caught up, breathless. She grabbed my arm. "Doctor, please. You're scaring everyone. You're scaring me." Her eyes glistened with something beyond fear. Pity. I wanted to tell her the truth, that this wasn't hallucination, that the toy was mine, marked with my initials, that a drowning child's voice had already spoken through the patient, but the words jammed in my chest. Instead, I whispered, "I think it wants me to follow." Her grip tightened. "And if you do, what then?" The fire truck answered for me. Its ladder jerked upward, pointing into the darkness of the stairwell.
And from below, faint but rising, came the unmistakable sound of water rushing, gurgling, like a river flowing beneath the hospital. The stairwell yawned before us, a mouth exhaling damp breath. Rust streaked the walls, and the faint gurgle of unseen water echoed upward, bouncing off the concrete like a whisper. The toy sat at the threshold, its ladder still pointing downward, a sentinel daring me to move. "I'm going," I muttered.
My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Marta's grip on my sleeve tightened. "You're not well. You need rest. You need—" A loud tink cut her off. The fire truck jolted forward on its own, rolled once, then tipped. It tumbled down the steps, bouncing metal against stone. The sound was identical to the one etched into my childhood. Tink, 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 as the toy had fallen into the storm drain. I froze. Marta flinched. "Jesus," she whispered. "Stay here," I told her, though I knew it was useless. "No chance," she said, her jaw set despite the fear in her eyes. "If you're going, I'm going." The stairwell swallowed us whole as we descended. Each step was slick, moisture clinging to the rails. My stethoscope bounced against my chest in an anxious rhythm, syncing with the distant rush below. Halfway down, the overhead lights flickered, then sputtered out completely. Darkness pressed in. Only the faint glow from Marta's flashlight cut the black, and even that seemed to bend, distorted by humidity. We reached the landing. The toy rested there, upright again, its wheels glistening. Marta lifted her light to it, and we both saw the scratch marks carved deeper now into its underside. Not just DRJ anymore. New letters had appeared, raw and jagged, gouged as though by frantic nails. "Died here." My throat closed. No, that wasn't... From below, the rushing water grew louder. Shapes shifted in the dark, the stairwell trembling as if something massive stirred underneath the hospital. The toy rattled violently, then shot forward down the final flight of stairs, vanishing into the dark with impossible speed. Martha's phone flickered. For a second, its beam illuminated the wall beside us, covered in handprints. Dozens, small, child-sized, pressed into the concrete as though made by wet palms. She gasped, "Doctor, they're yours." I looked closer. The prints were indeed mine. The small crooked finger, the faint scar from a childhood cut, all there. My hands multiplied endlessly, leading downward, and from the depths came a voice, high, fragile, mine at 7 years old. "You promised you wouldn't leave me again." The stairwell ended at a steel door, swollen with rust, water seeping through its seams in steady rivulets. The gurgling was louder now, almost a roar, as if an underground river churned just beyond the door. The toy truck lay at the foot of the door, its ladder twitching in irregular spasms. Each jerk echoed against the concrete, like a finger pointing. "Open it."
Marta raised her light, her knuckles white around the phone. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "We're in the middle of the hospital. There shouldn't be—" She trailed off, staring at the wet streaks running down the wall, dripping from nowhere. I pressed my palm against the cold metal. It vibrated faintly, a heartbeat that didn't belong. For a moment I swore I could feel my own pulse sinking with it, though I hadn't felt a real pulse since the morgue. The voice came again, higher this time, urgent, childlike. "Don't leave me." Marta's eyes darted. "That voice, it's mine," I finished, the words sticking in my throat. "It's me." Before she could stop me, I shoved the door. Rust shrieked, metal grinding against concrete, until a crack split wide enough for damp air to pour out. The smell of algae and rust hit us like a wave. We stepped inside. The chamber stretched vast and low, lit only by the weak cone of Marta's phone. Water lapped at the floor, ankle-deep, rippling in concentric circles as though something beneath it stirred. The sound of the hospital above seemed to vanish completely, replaced by the endless rush of unseen currents.
Floating in the center was the fire truck, impossibly upright, drifting like a boat on the black water. Its siren whined faintly, muffled and broken, the sound of a child's toy drowning but refusing to sink. Marta clutched my arm. "We need to leave, now." I shook my head. If I leave, it follows. It always follows. As if to prove me right, the water around us shifted. Small shapes rose to the surface, tiny pale hands breaking through, grasping, clawing. Dozens of them, child-sized, reaching from beneath the black water. Each hand was mine. Marta screamed. The toy truck's ladder snapped upright with a metallic click. Its wheels spun in place, and from its hollow frame came the sound of bubbling breaths, then a whisper, "You promised." And from the water, something began to rise. A small figure, soaked, hair plastered to its skull, face turned down. It coughed, water spilling from its mouth, before lifting its head. I looked into its eyes and felt my stomach twist. It wasn't Tommy. It wasn't the John Doe. It was me, 7 years old, lips blue, holding out trembling hands. The child version of me stood ankle-deep in the black water, trembling, hair plastered to his forehead. His eyes locked onto mine, wide and glassy, yet filled with something older than any child should carry. "Come with me," he whispered. His voice echoed in the chamber, bouncing off concrete like there were 100 children saying it. Marta's grip tightened on my sleeve. "Doctor, don't." The boy lifted his hands higher, water cascading from his fingers. "You left me there, in the storm. You promised you'd never let go." My stomach lurched. I remembered the grate, the roar of rushing water, Tommy bleeding on the curb, my father shouting. But there had been more, something I'd buried so deeply I thought it had vanished. The boy tilted his head, lips trembling. "You remember what you asked the water."
"No," I breathed, shaking my head. "You said, take it instead of me." My knees buckled. The words rang too true, dredged from the darkest corner of memory. I had whispered them when I dropped the toy. I had begged the storm to take the fire truck in exchange for my life. The boy's eyes glistened with tears, or river water. "It hurt you, and it kept me." The chamber groaned, the water rising against our legs. Marta cried out, trying to drag me back toward the stairwell, but the boy surged forward, his small hands clutching my coat. His grip was ice, stronger than bones should allow. "You gave me away," he hissed, voice cracking into something deeper, layered. "Now you take my place." The water surged higher, swirling around us in violent circles. The toy truck bobbed in the current, siren wailing louder, metallic and broken. The boy's face twisted, lips peeling back in a grin too wide for his small frame. Time to drown. He yanked hard, pulling me toward the center of the chamber. My shoes slipped, the water dragging me down with him. Marta screamed, clutching my arm, fighting to hold me back. The child's eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and his laughter bubbled through the rushing water. The current rose past my waist, my chest, my throat, until every breath was a gasp of panic. And then I was falling, tumbling under the surface, pulled into blackness by my own younger self. The water swallowed me whole, icy and endless. My scream was nothing but bubbles, rushing upward only to vanish into black. The boy's hand was still clamped around my wrist, dragging me deeper. His small body shouldn't have had such power, yet the current bent to him, coiling like a leash. His grin glowed faintly in the dark, eyes white and unblinking. "You asked for this," he whispered, voice echoing inside my skull rather than through the water. "You begged the storm to take me instead." And it did. I thrashed, but more hands erupted from the depths. Small, pale, grasping, dozens. Each one shaped like my own at 7 years old. They clawed at my coat, my arms, my throat, pulling me down, pulling me apart. I spun in the current, and the water lit faintly with their faces. Child versions of me circled in every direction, laughing, coughing, screaming. One held a rusted fire truck, another clutched a broken stethoscope, another had lips blue with cold. "You left us," they chorused, voices braided into one. "You bargained us away." The boy tugged me closer, his grip like iron. "Now you will drown for all of us." My lungs screamed. I clawed upward, kicking, but the circle of children only tightened. Their eyes glowed in the black, each one a mirror reflecting my guilt. And then, in the blur of panic, I saw Marta. Her face appeared above the water, faint but real, lit by the beam of her phone. She leaned over the stairwell landing, arms stretched down, hand open, shouting something I couldn't hear. Her voice was muffled, muted, but it was enough, a thread to pull against.
"No!" I screamed inside myself, bubbles tearing from my lips. "I won't drown here." I drove my elbow into the boy's small arm, prying his grip loose for a heartbeat. I kicked through the current, ripping past the pale hands. They clung, tore, left icy burns across my skin, but I forced upward, eyes locked on that faint glow of Marta's hand. The boy shrieked, his voice no longer childlike, but layered, deep, monstrous. "You can't escape yourself!" The water convulsed. The fire truck bobbed beside me, siren wailing, ladder snapping open like a claw. It hooked into my coat, dragging me back down. My chest convulsed. Black spots clouded my vision. I reached upward one last time. My fingers brushed Marta's. The drowned boy lunged, mouth yawning open too wide, filled with water. His teeth clamped onto my arm as I tore upward. Light split the water. Marta's grip closed around my hand, and the boy's howl dissolved into the roar of the flood as I was yanked toward air. Air slammed into my lungs like fire. I collapsed onto the stairwell landing, hacking up water that splattered across the concrete in black puddles. Marta crouched over me, her hands gripping my shoulder so tightly it hurt. "Breathe," she shouted, her face pale, eyes wide. "You're here! You're alive!" I dragged in ragged gulps of air, chest convulsing with every inhale. My skin burned cold, clothes plastered to me, as if I had been dredged straight from a river. For a moment, the sound of rushing water faded, replaced by the harsh chorus of my own gasps. But when I looked down the stairwell, the chamber was gone. No flood, no child doubles, no fire truck bobbing in the dark. Just concrete steps vanishing into shadow. Dry, empty. Martha followed my stare. "Doctor, there's nothing there!" I wanted to believe her. My hands trembled as I touched my arm where the drowned boy's teeth had sunk in. The skin bore no wounds, yet I swore I still felt the indentation of small jaws. "We need to get you upstairs," she said firmly, pulling me to my feet. "You're hypoxic, delirious." But her words fell away when we reached the ER again. The trauma bay was silent. The patient, John Doe, lay still, body cooling beneath a sheet. The monitor flatlined, steady and absolute. The fire truck rested on his chest, perfectly dry, gleaming as if freshly polished. No one else seemed to notice it. Not the nurses cleaning up, not the orderly wheeling equipment away. Only me. I stepped closer, unable to stop myself. My initials, DRJ, caught the light, carved deep and raw. And from inside the hollow frame came a sound, so faint Marta didn't react. A breath. Slow, wet, patient. The sheet shifted, just barely, as though something beneath it exhaled. I backed away, pulse hammering in my ears, though my fingers felt nothing at my neck. Marta touched my arm. "Doctor, you're shaking." "I'm fine," I lied, though my voice cracked. But as I turned to leave, the fire truck siren let out one single muffled wail. And in the reflection on the trauma bay glass, I didn't see myself. I saw the drowned boy smiling.